Greetings. I thought this would be a good way of explaining what I mean when I say it's a bad thing that ideology trumps reality. When you go in with certain a priori notions about what's right, what's correct, or, what you think is just good. I don't normally make videos, obviously, about veganism, and I wanted to make this video just because of some of the absurdities I've seen in recent days, observing the relationship of apparently vegans to their dogs and to a lesser extent their cats. Now, let me say at the outset, I have no problem with veganism per se. I do have a problem because it's not factual and it's counter to the evidence we have that veganism for human beings is the optimal form of nutrition. That's not data that we have. The data that do exist don't support that premise, and that's just the way it is. Now, when en masse scientific research comes out showing that veganism is the optimal form of nutrition for human beings, I'm all on board for that. What I consider veganism to be is it's an ideology. It's an ethically driven ideology, and I suppose there are some moral plaudits that I would give to it. I mean, you don't want to hurt things, you don't want to hurt animals. Good stuff. I don't really want to hurt animals either, at least directly. Although I have worked on a farm before, and I've actually slaughtered animals, so I'm not one of these people that is fearful of doing these things if need be. Many, many years ago, and it was only briefly. But I'd do it again if I had to. That's a separate issue, though. Veganism. So I consider it an ideology. I don't think it's a form of nutrition, but it's a form of nutrition that's informed by a certain ideology with the simple tenets of not harming living, or animals, rather. They harm plants, obviously. So, okay, fine. Whatever. You want to be a vegan? That's great. You want to claim that veganism is the optimized form of human nutrition? That's absurd, because there are no data supporting that claim. Okay, well, with vegans, I've dealt with online vegans and in-life vegans for a while now. Those are my positions regarding veganism. I think it's a nutritional ideology, effectively, and I think it has some good motives in some respects. But dogs. Dogs? Well, recently, in recent days, rather, I've come across a slew of posts or videos talking about vegan dogs, and to a lesser extent vegan cats, but I want to focus on vegan dogs for now, or in this video. One such video by someone called Freely the Banana Girl. She runs a vegan channel of almost 150,000 subscribers. She hails from the penal colony, and she talks about the glories of veganism and so on and so forth, and how fat and cholesterol are the cause of heart disease, even though, of course, there's never been an official study that established that link, apart from the Ansel Keys study, which has been discredited dozens of times. But anyway, she talks about veganism, and it's okay, fine. I mean, it is a propaganda channel. She's trying to promote her ideology. That's fine. These exist a dime a dozen. But then she talked about her recent acquisition of dogs a couple of months back. She acquired pets for the first time, dogs. And she feeds her dogs a vegan diet. I thought to myself first, a face palm, but I don't have enough face palms for my face, so what am I going to do? Surprisingly and interestingly enough, in reaction to her video, even her own subscribers, ardent and devoted vegans for human beings, said, well, I understand, for human beings, because supposedly it's optimized for human beings, but dogs, not so much. So let me get to that in a bit. Let's deal with the facts. Let's stick to the facts. Dogs are not obligate carnivores. That is true. They are what we call mesocarnivores. Mesocarnivores, and by the way, I don't think I've ever mentioned this, but I aspired to be a zoologist many years ago and spent a copious amount of time studying stuff, moving towards that end. As you can see, I'm a jack of many trades of knowledge. But anyway, dogs are mesocarnivores. What does that mean? Well, depending on what range you want to give, maybe approximately 60 to 70% of what they're going to eat is going to be meat, or I'm talking about a mesocarnivore here. So a mesocarnivore, probably about 70% of what it's going to eat is going to be meat, and the rest might come from herbs, berries, nuts, scavenged stuff, opportunists. I mean, the mesocarnivore is the classic opportunist. You see this in coyotes, in foxes rather, and you see this in certain species of bears as well. So that's what a mesocarnivore is. Now we can also look at the intestinal tract of a dog to give us some hints. Generally speaking, the longer the intestinal tract of an animal is, the more inclined it is to be an herbivore, or even rather an obligate herbivore. So for example, cows have really long digestive tracts, and tigers have really short ones. And there are reasons for this. It has to do with the nature of the matter they are consuming. Plant matter needs to be broken down and processed differently from meat matter, quite frankly. Cats, even house cats, domesticated cats, have very, very short intestines. Dogs have somewhat longer ones, but not quite as long as humans, and much, much shorter than a cow or any other bovine animal, obligate herbivore. What does this tell us? This tells us that dogs are mesocarnivores. Mesocarnivores, opportunists, primarily, however, focused on consuming meat. We can also see this in the jaw structure. A cow, of course, with its molars, will kind of chew. It'll move back and forth, and there's quite a range of movement. If you've ever seen a cow chew, when it chews certain grasses and plants, you go back and forth, almost undulating. Dogs, like cats, up and down, up and down. You can see the incisors in dogs, as well as the canine teeth, as opposed to flat or flattish molars. Human beings, of course, are a mixture of this. Human beings are omnivores. Yeah? Now, so we have these data. Dogs have relatively short intestines. They're not obligate carnivores. We can see this in their ancestry, but they are mesocarnivores. What does that tell us? Oh, and a final point. So, in order to digest and process starches, an animal needs to produce an enzyme called amylase. Amylase is produced in humans in the saliva, and cows produce in their saliva, and rhinoceri do, and omnivorous or herbivore tending or obligate herbivores produce amylase in saliva. Dogs do not produce in their saliva, however, they can produce in their pancreas. It is secondary, it is a backup, it's not natural. Well, let's get to the point. Having stated all of that. So, we've correctly identified what dogs are. Yes, they are a member of the carnivore family, but they are mesocarnivores, not obligate carnivores. But that still means approximately 70% of their food most likely would come from meat and not from plant matter. Intestinal tract, if they were designed, if they had evolved to consume primarily plant matter as opposed to meat matter, animal matter, they would produce in their saliva, just like human beings, and which are omnivores, or gazelles, they would amylase. They don't do that. They do it in their pancreas, which is really an inefficient way of going about it. Back up. So, now, the vegans, people who proffer and prefer both the ideology of veganism, then say, well, it's good for the dogs. The longest lived dog is a border collie, lived to be 21 and was on a vegan diet, supposedly. Okay, fine. I have several examples of women and men, particularly women, they tend to live longer, who smoked for 50, 60, 70 years and lived to be over 100. In some cases, 106, if I recall one example. So this is vegan logic, as I've encountered it on the internet at least. person is thin, dog lives long time, hence veganism is awesome, optimal, and the best thing in the world. I could say the same thing for smoking. Look, these people live to be 102, 103, and 106. They spent 70 years, 80 years in some cases, smoking cigarettes. That must be the reason. This is a fallacy in cause. They might be related to each other, but you need more data to establish this. Now, quite frankly, we don't have the data right now to make a claim that veganism is optimized nutrition for a dog. Look, if vegans want to stay on the ethical argument, I can get on board with that and say, look, I don't consume animal products. I can't conscious that for my pets as well. My suggestion then is to not have a dog or a cat as a pet. Cats are less mesocarnivorous and more obligate carnivorous than dogs. This is a tiny insertion there. Like I said, shorter intestinal tracts. I lost my train of thought here. This needs to be an ethical argument at best, but you'd probably want to buy a rabbit or a hamster, a guinea pig, or whatever. Dogs are mesocarnivores. They can some process starch by producing amylase in the pancreas. That's suboptimal, though. The data I've looked at suggests that home-prepared meals, primarily meat with maybe a small admixture of vegetable matter, are optimal. And they're not obligate vegetarians. They're not obligate herbivores. They're far, far away from that. So this was the final nail in the coffin for me when I get so irritated. I think the thing that irritates me more than anything else in the world are people knowingly lying about things they either don't know about or they claim to know about but then lie anyway. But in particular, is Freely the Banana Girl. She's just habitual with this. I mean, she claims that high-carb vegan diet, consuming 30 bananas a day, that's approximately, depending on the size of the banana, 6,000 calories. I'll be less conservative. I'll say 5,000. This is the key to health and a good life. Maybe it is for her. Of course, she rarely reveals that she cycles dozens of kilometers every day, apparently, as well, so that helps. Like I said, if you want to offer an ideology to people and say, here, there are ethical grounds for this, and I agree. I mean, it probably would be better if we didn't have to slaughter animals. And probably a more ethical solution would be to consume insects, but I don't think many Westerners would get on board with that. But it goes a step too far, I think. I mean, dogs evolved differently to humans. Dogs are not humans. Yes, human beings can do pretty well on a vegan diet, but there's no data to suggest that there are no data to suggest that vegan is optimal. And I think more data suggests that once again, an omnivorous diet some form of omnivorous diet is optimal. I'm not going to. Maybe I'll talk about what kind might be optimal in a different video. Never mind individual genetic metabolic differences, which I found to be so individual that you can't even. I mean, it's just really, it comes down to individual when it comes to metabolism. But dogs, there are probably some individual differences in dogs. Each dog is an individual as well. But mesocarnivores with relatively short gastrointestinal tracts that cannot produce amylase in their saliva. I don't know what else you need to know that feeding a dog a vegan diet is probably suboptimal. I'm open to the idea that it could be optimal if they do rigorous testing and amass data over the next few years. But never mind some of the deficiencies that can arise from that. I mean, dogs and cats require, for example, taurine, which is an important amino acid, and vegan cats or dogs probably won't be getting sufficient amounts of that on a purely vegan diet. So, but I'm making this video not just to nitpick about the specifics of metabolic evolution and categories of carnivore or omnivore, but rather the necessity to try to stick to the truth. This is why it's so important to be in touch with reality. Because with these extreme vegans who claim that an optimal diet for a dog consists of vegan diet, which just countermands everything we know about dog physiology and metabolism, and particularly cats, even worse, I think, in some regards. The ideology has trumped reality. You know, what's more important, ideology or truth? And I think this is why we always need to stick to our guns regarding the truth. I mean, we cannot go into anything invested with a preconceived notion of the world or how it should be. This applies to political ideologies, and as we've seen here, it applies to nutritional ideologies as well. This is, you know, if you're willing to sacrifice the truth for your ideology, you're going to lose at least intellectual credibility, on an intellectual plane credibility. I've seen this freely, the Banana Girl make the worst arguments ever. She seems to thrive on tu quoque arguments, that is to say, I'm not going to believe what person X is saying because person X, I don't know, is fatter than I am, for example. That has nothing to do, that's what we call a tu quoque fallacy, that has nothing to do with the facts. She can claim all she wants that veganism is the optimal form of nutrition for human beings, and then cite fat people who can eat meat, and then she could at the same time also cite CrossFit athletes, top CrossFit athletes who consume copious amounts of meat, and then what, be disproven? Does that mean that whatever nutritional program CrossFit athletes are on is the optimized form of nutrition for human beings? No, it doesn't. It's a complicated topic. It's a lot more complicated than just saying, look, I'm skinny, look, that guy is fat, i.e. high-carb vegan diet, raw fruit diet is the best diet in existence for human beings. So this is kindergarten stuff. But I find it a travesty to be applying this kind of thought or these kinds of thought processes to dogs. I mean, animals evolve differently. It's just the way it is. Now, never mind the fact that though human beings are certainly omnivores, we know, there's a lot of data on this, that our brain size, in no small measure, is due to our consumption of animal protein throughout our evolution. As our hominids began to fashion spears and hunt animals, yes, they learned also that animal protein is good, contains a lot of fats, saturated fats that we need for, say, cell membrane maintenance and things like that. And over time, that led to larger brains. Look, like I said, people want to be vegans. Great. You have your ethical reasons. Fine. It is a nutritional ideology, though. It's not an ideology based on sound scientific data that has been peer-reviewed and has consensus in the scientific community on a wide scale. And for dogs, I just think it's absurd. I mean, you don't even need to know the stuff about amylase and intestine size and length, rather, to make a call about dogs. I mean, dogs did not evolve to be vegans. They evolved to be mesocarnivores with opportunistic tendencies for other kinds of food sources. Anyway, I've talked enough. I don't want to talk too much more about this, but I shall encourage you and join you once again to never let ideology, no matter what sort of ideology it might be, trump facts, reason, and truth. Until the next time, as always,